What's up, everybody? This is Indie Game Business, and let me turn this music down. I'm Indy. That guy way over there is Jay, and in the middle we have game attorney Tom Buscaglia. Did I say it right?
Nice. Yeah, it's pretty close.
Pretty close. Good enough.
Pretty close, as close as you can say, anyway.
The guy on the right is regretting this show already. I'm 2 minutes in.
I got to tell you, you guys missed the best part of it.
Oh, when he's calling Alexa names, that was the best part.
No. It got beyond that when he went to pee with the microphone on. So it was like
right behind this wall behind me is
a little piss pot.
A small bathroom in my office, so I don't have to go all the way up. I have an executive office with covered parking underneath it, adjacent to my home. That's a fancy way of saying a room over the garage.
Does that mean your office is over the garage? It's like, I have a fancy office with adjacent parking next to my office, meaning that my office is built in half of the garage. So
nice. Well, I didn't want to lose parking spaces. So.
Yes, folks, it's Tom today, and so I'm already drinking.
Hey, me too, but I've got this fine.
But you can't. Yeah, it's 9 a.m. where you are. At least I can justify it by saying it's after lunch. Here. So Tom is a longtime attorney. To the industry, small companies, big companies. I've known Tom for 20-some years now, and he's actually our corporate attorney. We use all the time. I mean, absolutely.
Everything. He won't sign a piece of paper without.
Yes, absolutely. Everything has to be signed.
I review every one of his emails.
So we're going to go through today and tell you why you shouldn't be like me, and you should have an attorney, and you do need to have all this, stuff in order. And we're probably going to get derailed even more so than we normally do because we've just known each other far too long and been through too much, shit together over the years. So, I have worked, with Tom when my clients were also his clients. I have worked on the other side of the table from Tom. And
you've worked for my clients as well.
Yes. So there's a whole lot of
that was a very dark period.
Yeah. One that we will not get into.
We're not
on the show. Definitely one of my more entertaining episodes, though.
Me too.
Yeah,
not that me too. This me.
That's
Can't use that word.
That's a story for not live on Twitch and
where there's not a bunch of white guys sitting around talking this shit. That would be disastrous. Next thing you know, I'll be on the Supreme Court.
And it's if you do get that far, I will be rich, given the amount of money you're going to have to pay me to keep my mouth shut.
Oh my God.
So, Tom, let's rewind 60 years to when we first got in the industry.
60 years. No, let's make it 50 years.
50. Okay, we'll do 50. So tell us how you got here, and then give us the overview of what you've done over the course of your career in this industry.
Oh, come on. Seriously. All right. Let's see. Well, I was born in Buffalo, New York in the late 40s. I was a baby boomer. And no, you don't want to go back.
We probably don't have to go that far back.
Okay. So let's see. I could go to. Well, so then I was in college for a while, and I dropped out and joined a rock and roll band and came here. Actually, I came out to Seattle with my band, and I was out here for about 5 years. Moved back east. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. And then after I moved back east, I decided maybe I should finish my college career because I'd left it in the middle. And got my undergraduate degree in philosophy from the University of Buffalo, and then got my law degree. I was lucky enough to get into Georgetown University in Washington. No idea why they took me. But I was in my 30s by the time I got to law school. So I had a whole bunch of really cool shit, some of which I'm not allowed to speak about under advice of counsel. So I graduated law school, got a job in Miami, went down there in the early 90s, around 91, I think, is when I represented my first developer. And it was just another client. You know, a friend of mine was general counsel for this company, and I did some work for them. Mostly, I think it was an SBA loan and some other stuff. And this guy never paid anybody. I should have been suspicious. So I represented him, defending him in a bunch of suits by people he owed money to. And of course, then he didn't pay me either.
You think you would learn from that?
Yeah, I know. Anyway, so then I just kind of went on about my business. I was doing a lot of, I had a 5-month criminal racketeering trial where I represented 14 people accused of half a dozen murders. It was pretty cool. Got my client off. It was wonderful. And then I had a couple of really great drug cases that I did. Because I was doing court-appointed defense work, mostly just to get into the court because I love being in the court. And then I started playing. Then I went through this long 3-month trial, and I came out, and my practice was pretty much decimated. And I was broke, and it was a horrible time. And my credit was in the shitter. And I got this letter from these people that General Electric credit, and I did a lease purchase on a photo, right? And I just had this photocopy, and I paid $100 a month for like 5 years. And they said, "Hey, you paid off your loan. You're a great customer. We want to lend you money." And at this point, I couldn't get a credit card. I was just completely screwed. And so I said, "Will you do a credit check?" And they said no. So I went out and got a whole bunch of really nice computers from at the time. I think we were still on on typewriters. And so I got this. I got a bunch of computers for my office. I had ISDN installed in my office and home, if you remember what that is. This is back when, this was real. I was a low-paying bastard. And then for my home computer, so that I could work remotely, I had tower speakers. I built at the time, these were like 286s, maybe 286. Really, geez, I think my first machine had like 64 megs of RAM. It was just stupid. But it would play Quake. So anyway, so I got a gaming rig for my house because I always wanted to have one. And I started playing, and I don't know, I got online. It just kind of caught fire. I started playing a lot of Quake. We formed the clan, Fate's Minions, in 1997, I think, January 97. Still play together every once in a while, like yesterday. And so I started playing, and then I got curious. Yay. And I think I met you shortly after this, Jay. I went to E3 back when it was in Atlanta. Were you at that one?
Yep.
Yeah. Wow, what a great time. Anyway, and mostly, I think I had Supreme Warlord Fate's Minions on my little name tag, right? And but I was just real curious about the industry, and I really wanted to see what was going on. So I actually met with a couple of my friends. We had a great time. But I wasn't going there as a lawyer. And then the following year, I went to the Game Developers Conference in San Jose, and still I said, I'm an independent game producer. I don't even know what the hell I am. I just love games, and I want to be here. And then I don't know, I got to, what was the next one? I think was the following year at, in 2000, I was at E3, and I ran it. I just joined the Computer Game Developers Association, which was the predecessor to the International Game Developers Association, and met with a bunch of people there about that, or some people. It's minutia probably is too important at this point. So that kind of led to me getting involved, and I formed the South Florida chapter of the IGDA and started meeting more and more developers. And as I met more and more developers, I kind of realized that my core skill set was really lacking in a lot of small developers. And oddly enough, I think I've been pretty much dedicated to, I'm curious, I sometimes have trouble with the word indie, and I know your channel is named Indie, but I guess I would prefer to refer to my clients as independent developers, meaning they're self-owned. Indie is, I have a lot of trouble with the word indie because we don't seem to be able to distinguish between hobbyists who like to make games but aren't really serious about making a career in the game industry, or haven't really thought through the process enough, and independent developers who are people really serious about running a studio. And I tell people all the time, you can, if you want to make great games, make a great studio first, and then you get to make a lot of great games. But if all they're trying to do is if all you want to do is make games, just get a job making games. Anyway, so there I was playing Quake with my buds, and then I ended up sort of eventually getting in the industry. It just kind of grew from there. First couple of clients I represented, I did on, I realized that, studios that had succeeded already had lawyers. So it's not like I was going to go to Bungie or Valve and say, hey, you should hire me because I've never been in the industry, but I'm really smart. That's not going to work. So I started representing brand new studios, and I know they didn't have money, so I would agree to do it for a percentage of their revenue if they succeeded. The vast majority of them failed. I probably wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars of my time trying to do that. But I ended up meeting a lot of people and learning a lot, and some of them did. They all didn't fail, and the ones that did bought me a boat. So it worked pretty good. So when it hit really well. But 1 out of 20 maybe success rate, maybe less. And this is back when it was easier to succeed than it is now.
Oh yeah.
And so I got involved with the IGDA. I founded the South Florida chapter. I moved to Seattle about 12 years ago. I resurrected the chapter here, got that going, served on the board of directors for 9 years. I was the chair and the treasurer, and I co-founded the IGDA Charitable Foundation, which is still going today. So I did a lot of volunteer work, mostly just because I really wanted to help my developers. And I continue to represent indies. I've never represented a publisher. I don't do it. I think that there's an inherent conflict of interest there. Maybe there isn't, but you can't serve two masters, So
but now we're seeing a whole lot of the developers turn into publishers.
Yeah, what the heck is up with I've got over here on my whiteboard. You can't see it, but I can. There's a whole bunch of whiteboard stuff, right? And I have notes to myself, and I have a list of things that I would love to, that I'm thinking about ranting about. Okay, so the first one is my chair, because I got this really great chair that I like. You got to, it's like a chair that is, it's a leather, it's a Ralph Lauren writer's chair. If you want to look it up on Google, but it's the most comfortable chair in the world. Feels like remember when you were a kid, you get a baseball glove and you put a ball in it, and then you oil it and then put a ball in, and then wrap it up in the string. It feels like that on my ass, like my ass is the ball.
Did you sit in it and oil it and then wrap your butt to the chair for?
I did, yes. It's with great. I'm still trying to get the stick of great tape on. My wife had to cut me out. No, come on. It's just but and the second one on that list is, what is that? Oh, that is volunteer guilt, which is where you volunteer to do something because you really want to see it happen, but you really don't have enough time. So then you start feeling guilty because you're not doing your volunteer work, but it's, for fuck's sake, it's volunteer work. Why would you feel guilty about it? Then you start resenting your relationship with the entity that you're volunteering your time for. So that's another thing that I was thinking about talking about sometime or writing about, but I don't. And then the last one on the list is indie publishers, because I'm very torn about this. I've had clients who've gone into publishing, and I think that the first indie publisher I ever dealt with was Valve Software. And I represented the second third-party game ever published on Steam. And back then, they sent me a contract in a dream, because it was an indie it was like dealing with another, at the time, publishers owned access to the marketplace. You remember this, Jay.
Oh,
and
yeah.
if you wanted to make a game and sell it, you had to go through an existing publisher because you couldn't talk to the retailers, and that was the only place you could sell games. There was no online sales. So, they had all this leverage in negotiations, and you would be lucky, if you netted out 14%, on your game, you were doing pretty good.
That was extremely good.
Yeah.
After everybody got,
everybody
chunk out of the pot.
Yeah, probably closer to 7 was average, id Software, I think, had like a 30% deal, and that was the best thing in the industry at the time. Anyway, so I sort of came in with that mindset. But when Steam started up, I was representing the guys at Tripwire Interactive. You should get Alan on here; he's great. Anyway, and they had just wanted to make something Unreal Contest, and we were trying to get a publisher. We negotiated with Midway for months and months and months, and then their marketing team wouldn't greenlight the game, which is just stupid. They had over 400,000 downloads of their mod. How could you not? It's just anyway. But they wouldn't, and then John Gibson over there said he wanted to show it to Valve to see if they would put it on Steam, and I said, John, this is a story that I use to show people that I really don't know shit about anything, in spite of everything that I've been through. So John says, well, why don't we see if we can get it this new Steam thing with Valve? And I said, John, your game is on the Unreal engine, right? Valve makes and markets the Source engine, which is a direct competitor. Your game is a World War II multiplayer first-person shooter. Valve has Day of Defeat Source that's about to be released in the next couple of months, right? Most of your potential users, your gamers, are going to come up from the counter. The counter source was it at the time, right? They're going to come from the counter source community. There's no way they're going to give you access to that community because they own it, right? So there's no reason they would do it. And he said, this is the most profound thing I've ever heard a developer said. And to his credit, I think all their success today comes from this attitude. And it says, Tom, what do we got to lose? At the time, he'd been living in his mother-in-law's basement with his two kids for 2 years trying to build his studio, right? They were all in. They were way in. They were upside down. They put everything they got out of the contest into it. It was really scary. They're like holding on from their bleeding fingernails. And they showed it to the guys at Valve, and to their credit, Gabe saw it and said, oh, sure, I'd love to sell it. This would be great. Because it would identify the fact that their intention at Steam was to make Valve a completely open, neutral platform for anybody to sell their games on, not just for them to sell their own games on, which I didn't. Nobody was doing that. Nobody was that enlightened at the time. Then they sent me their contract. I changed 2 words and sent it back. They said, okay. And it was written by Jason Holtman. I don't know if you know Jason. I think you know him. He's at Oculus now, I think. And it was just a plain language thing that was easy to understand. I felt dirty reading it because I'm so used to trying to get a better deal for my clients, but there was no better deal to be had. This was just a fair thing. And they were offering at the time, which was unheard of, 50-50 with the developer on a non-exclusive basis and 60-40 on an exclusive basis, right? So they went with the exclusive deal. When the game released, Gabe sent him a case of champagne. He flew the whole team out to Seattle to fet them from time to time. That's what they used to do in the very beginning because they're. I
was going to say, and now if they did that, they'd be bankrupt.
No. Well, they can't. Yeah, but the dev days is still a pretty good deal. Anyway, so that's sort of as close to it. So that was the first indie publisher. Was actually Valve. The new wave of indie publishers, I got some problems with it. It's sort of like my problems with indies in general, right? There's a lot of really talented people in the indie community, and there's a lot of fucktards who don't know what they're doing and don't know what they don't. Did I say that wrong? No, there's just a lot of hubris about, I have been playing games my whole life. I know more than the guys do at Blizzard, which is just insane, They don't have enough information to know the scope of their ignorance. There was a recent. Did you read that article? What was on Game Dev Biz? A guy just put out an article the other day about how stop encouraging indies. You're not doing them a favor. And I don't know. I have some clients and friends who came up just with on their feet, dragging their butts up a long hill, and they've succeeded. And I've got a couple of really good friends and clients that are like that. But the vast majority, the thing I kept running into is they get to a point where they start to succeed, and now they have to build a studio, and they've never worked in a studio that was run professionally or competently. Or they came up. My son was like this. He worked in a couple of studios that just weren't very well run. And he tried to make his own studio, and he didn't have the mental model. He didn't have that Aristotelian perfect model in his mind that he could build his thing from. That's platonic, not Aristotelian. Jeez, what's wrong with? Oh, my philosophy professor's rolling over in his coffee. Anyway, so that's how I guess that's my background. I got lost in there.
So, but wait, let's talk about that article, because that article has caused all kinds of strife. And I read the article, and the headline is way more evil than the actual article, because the article I agree with, that there's so much in there that, you know, you're right. People look at it and go, oh, well, I've been playing games for 10, 15 years. I know exactly how to make a game. And they don't know, what did Jen say last week, Indy? You can Google what you don't know, but you can't Google what you don't know you don't know.
Yeah, that was it.
And, you know, and that's the way it is. And so it's like, I read that article because I was like, I first saw the headline and I'm like, oh my God, you know, this, who would write this? And then I read the article and I went, you know what? I don't disagree with, you know, a lot of it. I don't agree with everything that was in there. I didn't disagree with a lot of it because it is hard. I mean, to be successful in this industry and actually make money, it is extremely hard. Yes, you can go make a game. And that's, if that's what you want to do as a hobbyist, that's fine. But you can't turn around and then rant and rave about the indie apocalypse when you didn't go through the steps that you needed to go through to not only, you know, form a company and, you know, be real about it, but actually put something out there that's competitive and, you know, that has the chance to succeed. So yeah, I mean, and that may be a very unpopular opinion, but I don't think that article was as bad as the headline and all the uproar makes you think it actually
No,
is.
that title was just great clickbait is what it was.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the title. This is more interesting. You want to get broader? Oh, never mind. Let's talk about the industry. No, I just think I think this is an artifact of the attention economy, where it doesn't matter what you say. The only real value. This is how you know the environment of lies that we're living in now, and the discontent and all this shit is, I think, is in large part as a result of, you know, when I was growing up, it was Superman on TV, and it was truth, justice, and the American way, and we were all to be honorable, or at least we were supposed to be honorable. We were supposed to be honest. We were supposed to be all these things. And in today's world, all you're supposed to be is having as many people looking at you as possible, and that's really the only value. This is the value. This is value. If people know me, if people follow my channel or follow my Twitch feed or whatever, my value as a human being is based upon how many people I have following me. And if you want people to pay attention to you, you don't say, "Hey, the world is a beautiful place. Aren't we all glad to be alive?" You say, "Fuck those guys over there, and these people are doing evil," and you make up crazy shit because people can't believe it, but they'll stare at it. People, you know, drive by a train wreck and try not to stop and look. You know, everybody wants to see the train wreck, and it just got, and I think once this started to happen, and I would point to guys like Limbaugh and guys like that, and just say outrageous shit all the time because they want people to continue to come back and listen to their crazy shit, and then they just start saying more and more, and then everybody else realizes that, oh well, geez, I don't have to have any facts. All I need to do is be able to say crazy shit, and people will come and look at me. And so this is, and titles, how about anything happens in the industry that anybody in the International Game Developer Association is associated with, either directly or indirectly, and the title to that article will say, IGDA this happened to that, right? Or this happened to IGDA something, because they know that putting that brand in the title is going to drag more eyeballs to the article, and that's what you do with that, you know. I mean, and I'm guilty, you know. I mean, I've gotten a lot of traction just, you know, what I like to refer to as kicking the big dog in the knee, like getting up in front of the indies at the Indie Game Summit at GDC years ago, and talking about how Microsoft had jacked up the rate on Xbox games, had dropped the rate for indie developers on the Xbox from 70% rev share to a 35% rev share, and how they were losing, and people refused to sign up for it, right? And they're still giving 70% to publishers, and they're going to give 35% to indies. imagine how outraged I was. And of course, I got a lot of play off of that. It was also true, and I was speaking as a sort of justice, not like just to pay attention to me, but it does work. You get a lot. You want to if you're unknown, the best thing to do is find somebody who's very well known and kick them in the knee. So I guess there's a lot of that. That said, the article, I thought it was very good, and I thought the scientific research that they cited in there, I don't know if you dug that deep into it, but it's pretty interesting stuff. I mean, there's been a lot of work done on people getting into somewhere where there's you see the curve where there's a confidence curve, and people have a lot of confidence when they get into something because they're all about passion. And then there's this point where they realize what they don't know, and their confidence drops down to a pit. And then eventually over time it builds back up as they learn and become confident.
The Dunning-Kruger effect.
Thank you. Well said. Jeez. You have a mind like a steel trap, or you've got...
No, I'm looking at the article. Because you explained it the same way I would explain it,
Yeah, vaguely and incompetently, yes. So, I think there's a lot and I've been telling people, Dustin, geez, when he was working at Full Sail, he used to, this a mutual friend of ours, Dustin Klingman, he's now with Sony, but he had his own studio in Florida and also taught at Full Sail, and they used to call him the Dream Crusher. I mean, kids would go into his course and they'd come out going, "Oh my God, what am I doing with my life?" And I do it all the time.
That's what they used to say about me too. When I would sit down and say, "Your game it's just not going to make it."
Well, even if it's good. Look here's the way I do it now is I'm assuming that whatever game they're doing is going to be of a superior quality with fantastic gameplay and the unique ability to get people to play it and want to play it more, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a huge assumption, right? And I just start there and then say, now, how do you succeed from there? Because having that gets you nothing. Did I ever show you, what was the name? The game Herald? It's a side-scrolling, cartoony game. I had a client, Loris. I think so. I had him at GDC a couple times. This guy put millions of dollars into this beautifully elegant little game. Side-scroller. He was all into animation cells. He was a collector of animation cells. And first time I saw this, I said to him, "You have to invite me to sit at your table at the AIS Award. You get the downloadable game of the year. Because this is the most stunning thing." It was so pretty that Unity used it on their show reel at all the game shows for about a year and a half. That's how pretty it was. Nobody thought it. He did it like animation, so it had overlaying 2D pieces, right? And then 3D characters moving in the foreground. So when you move through it, it looked like animation. So the background kind of moved in layers. Game was stunningly beautiful. Put it out, sold literally, I thought this was going to be just a home run. Sold literally hundreds of units. Right?
Because, yeah.
And I could go backwards in hindsight and say, well, better. They didn't do this, they didn't do that. But the reality is that this is a fucking great game. No question about it, right? Nobody played it. And I'll bet you there's a graveyard full of hundreds and millions of really great games that nobody played. Mm-hmm. So there's that too, and that is, being able to make a great game is half of being able to succeed. And the other half is being able to get ready for it, kids. Being a good business person.
Which is why we're here today. And it is. I can't count the number of games that I've seen over my career that I look at and I'm like, that is unique, that is fantastic, that is awesome. But because of X, Y, and Z, it's never going to be found. Not even like downloaded and play. It's the industry is so, there are so many games coming to market every day that you've got to do something, and you've got to go to that extra step to be found, much less looked at and tried and purchased or whatever along those lines. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And I still get emails every week. "Hey, we've got a game coming out. Can you help us with the marketing? We don't have any budget, but we're launching in 2 weeks." I mean,
that's cruel.
It is. I mean, and it is cruel, but this is the reality of the world that we live in. Yes, we have, from the indie developer point of view, you have nearly unfettered access to your customers. You know, you're going to give up 30% of your game, which everybody rants about. But, you know, I remember not even a decade ago when if you had a casual game, you gave up 70% of your downloadable inventory. I mean, your cost.
PC games, you gave up more than.
Yeah. And so there's so much out there now that you can't just like go and say, we made this great game and now we're going to release it and we hope everybody finds it. I had a developer tell me one day at GDC, I said, what's your market? I mean, he had a great looking game. I said, what's your marketing strategy? He goes, oh, Apple's going to feature us. And I was like, I can't even answer that. I just.
That's one day. That's one day. What about day two?
Well, even this was back when if Apple featured you, you actually, you know, moved some units, but you only moved them as long as you were featured. And
yeah.
But there's no guarantee of that. Nobody sits around outside of the big publishers who are generating millions and millions of dollars for Apple. And they don't give you this golden letter that says, when you finish your game, Tom, we're going to feature you. It doesn't.
Oh, you mean somebody somewhere says he would get it. If it's really good, Apple will feature it, but he didn't know that?
Oh, absolutely not. I said, who are you talking to at Apple? And he's like, well.
Oh, I haven't talked to anybody there.
We've got a contact. We've got an account manager. I think he said we have an account manager.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, absolutely nothing. You can't, you know, the world doesn't work like that anymore, you know. And so,
well, but here the reality is there's also this. If they're small and they're building little games and they're not betting the ranch on it, meaning they're keeping their day job, if they're an enthusiast as opposed to a professional, then I guess it's okay, right? You can make your game, put it out there, and maybe it succeeds. But you're not thinking this is my career now, like a grown up. You know, you're just saying, oh, I want to make a game. I'm going to make a game, put it out, and it's going to succeed because I believe it's going to succeed. Well, that's probably not going to work. Yeah. But it's okay if that's what their goal is. But what bothers me is when people, you know, they put money into it. They get a bunch of people together. They either max out their credit cards, or maybe they have some personal wealth. You know, they put $200,000 or $300,000 into this thing, and they've got all these people who expect to be able to have a job tomorrow. And that's when the real burden starts, right? It's when you have a group of people that you care about or love that are looking to you to help them make a living doing what they love. And they're willing to buy into your vision of what the game should be and all that stuff. I mean, that's a huge level of trust, and then to say, and then to let everybody down by just not thinking through this whole part of it. And then again, that's why you're here, and we all try. You know, those of us on the business side all try to help people, but it's the term hubris keeps popping up in my mind.
So even with what I do and what I know and you know what I preach and you know what, I was still in this industry for over a decade before I made the jump to actually start a company. And then it was probably 4 years into that before I actually had enough nerve to actually hire people and pay them a salary because of exactly that. I had seen so many companies do that, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to go down this route. And that adds I joke in the office that I don't want to be in charge. That, you know, someone said, what are we gonna do about this? I was like, I don't know, I'm not in charge. They're like, your name is literally on the company, and I'm like, yeah. I don't want to make decisions. You know, I'm doing this for other reasons, but you can't not. And yes, you do. I mean, there's been more sleepless nights, you know, over what is my team going to do than over what I'm going to do, because I know at the end of the day, you know, I'll be okay, you know. But it's when you have that extra level of stress that comes along with, you know, here are, you know, the biggest my company's been was like 4 people full time anyway. And so I can't even imagine something like, you know, the shitstorm over at Telltale, where you just come in one day and go, okay, well, 250 people we're going to let you all go. And there's no severance, that you're not going to have any insurance. And it's like Indy said.
They're so fucked. Have you ever heard of the Warren Act?
The what?
Warren, W-A-R-N Act.
Oh, yeah.
If a company has, I believe I'm pretty sure it's 55 employees or more, and they know in advance that they're going to close down and even a factory, a single location, or the company, and lay off more than 55 people, they have to give them 90 days.
So, all right, so
then again, if the company goes into bankruptcy, I don't know where they're going to get the money, but it's still a bad thing.
To vaguely wrap this back around to law,
I know
we were talking about this with Jen. Have you ever seen a class action lawsuit come against a game developer or publisher after something like this? Because they filed one. One of the people that were laid off filed a class action lawsuit against Telltale for violating that particular.
The Warren Act, yeah.
Have you ever seen that happen before?
I did employment litigation, employment law, discrimination, and that stuff for years before I got into this stuff. Keep in mind, I've been around a while. I'd seen Warren Act cases. I was even involved in one of those. But I've never seen one in the industry, but I don't track litigation in the industry. I mean, I'm not one of those dogs who hunts there. Since I don't do litigation anymore, I'm probably not paying attention to it. I get my information the same place you do. Right?
Twitter.
So well, no, I don't. No, I don't do Twitter. I get too upset.
But I mean, and that's what we were talking about. It's like I was so mad that night. You know, one, that a company would let something get to that point, but two, that the prime bitch that I saw on Twitter was, well, what are we going to do about what happens to Clementine? The hell with Clementine. 250 people just lost their jobs. Clementine is fine. The end. Go. It's
what you're talking about. Clementine, the character in their game.
Yes.
What is wrong with? There you go. That's how fucked up things are.
Yes. So yeah, I joined that little.
I gotta tell you, I never liked their game. So.
They had the "as a game worker" hashtag going, and that's what I wrote. It's like, as a game worker, I want to see our peers and our fans understand that the horror of what happened at Telltale was that 250 people lost their jobs and their insurance overnight. Not is Clementine going to get eaten by a zombie? It's just
Let's assume that she was and leave it at that.
Yeah, exactly. And she rode off into the sunset and got eaten. So I mean,
and then began eating. And then she ate her parent.
I had never seen, if I did, I certainly don't remember it, a studio file a class action lawsuit when this happened, despite the fact that there should probably be one of those lawsuits filed about every 2 weeks in this industry.
Well, look at this. I guess the question is, what assets does the studio? First of all, these sorts of cases are done on a contingency fee basis by the lawyers, which means the lawyers basically get all the people to sign over a part of the proceeds, or in a class action case, they go to the court, and the court will allocate a substantial portion of the recovery to the law firm. So let's say you represent a class action suit with 250 people in it, right? And you get them $10 million. Well, the law firm's going to get 30 or 40% of that, because that's what lawyers get in those cases. And then that other 60%, well, first they're going to deduct all their litigation costs from that 60%. So let's say it gets it down to 50%. So that 50% of that $10 million is $5 million. But if you look at each individual in that 250 person group, each person's not going to get much money. Meanwhile, the lawyers are making bank. So the reason for that is, it's not because lawyers are evil. It's because there needs to be a strong financial incentive for lawyers to get involved in a case that's demanding and that complex, because they'll probably put anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million attorney time into it. So and if you want to do that, there has to be a multiplier, a risk multiplier, to make it worthwhile for them to do it. So yeah, they make money, but it's not that they're greedy. It's just that they're motivated. That's what motivates lawyers,
money.
Yeah, well, so that's what I have to say about indie pub. Oh shit! Didn't we lose track of that?
Yeah,
Let's talk, yeah,
welcome to the show, Tom. That's
yeah. That's welcome to my life. This is perfectly normal for me. So let's go back to indie publishers because I think we just laid a great groundwork for it, and that is if they're this good. Let me spout. Let me rant a bit about this. Okay, so the way I look at the indie ecosystem is, first of all, there's the first tier indies. These are the guys who came out at the very beginning, when indies were first all that. Guys like Team Meat, Super Meat Boy, and some of the other classics, where these guys just have. I mean, in addition to having a really good game, their timing was perfect. And you know as well as I do, Jay, the timing in the industry, a lot of the time, is what really creates the success. As much as, well, it's just like the guys at Tripwire. If they would have come to Valve a year later, they wouldn't have had the exposure and the support that they did. You know, so and if they come to them 5 years later, they would be gone by now. So there's hello.
No, that was me getting a calendar invite for a meeting that I forgot that I had.
Oh,
don't worry about that.
Oh, now you'll never get me back on track.
Pay no attention to that.
No. So there's this first level of indies, right? And then there's the second tier. These are guys like, I guess, the guys at Spry Fox, Dave Ettery and Dave, clients of mine. They're kind of second tier. Their games succeed. They're making a good living, but they're not icons in the industry like Adam Saltzman and some of these other guys.
They don't have the Epic Games Lamborghinis yet.
Right. And well, the thing is, what happens with these guys is whatever they do, people are going to buy it because they know it's Jonathan Blow, or it's one of these guys that's really so well established. And they're great game makers, don't get me wrong, but they've got the added cachet of the longevity and the reputation. They've got an established brand. And the second tier guys kind of have an established brand. And then there's pretty much everybody else after that, which are just struggling to get any recognition to sell their games. So does it make sense for some of these first and second tier guys to become publishers and to be able to trade off on that notoriety and brand that they've established to sell other people's games and their experience, because they have in fact had success selling games? Well, yeah, sure, it's okay to do that. Do they have the competence to do that? This is where I don't know. You know, if you made a great game, early generation, does that give you the qualifications to actually publish someone else's game? Because there are a lot of publishers out there, and we could do one of these shows sometime where we name them all.
I track 500 publishers now, Tom.
All right, you know which
so
ones
we don't have time to name them all.
No, but you know which ones are the bottom feeders who are taking advantage of independent.
Yep.
Okay, and I do too. Well, I don't know. I probably don't know as many as you do, but I want that list. So
we can set that up because what's my story? Yeah. Video game consulting. You can have the list for a mere $175.
All right, I'll take it off your bill. You do understand that I'm billing you for this.
Oh, is that what this is? Am I getting billed for that?
So anyway, back to my thoughts on it. So I question. I know they certainly and other indies who idolize these guys are going to be willing to give them to put their game in these guys' hands in order to sell it. And what a publisher does is there's some things that publishers traditionally did. Number one was advance you enough money to make your game. Well, that's not part of this transaction, is it? Then they used to have the exclusive access to the distribution channel because you couldn't get your games in GameSpot or any of these other places if you didn't have one. They don't have that anymore because we've got digital distribution. So what the other powerhouse piece of the puzzle that the good publishers did and the bad ones don't is they would have the ability to bring people to your game, to look at it and to play it and to buy it, right? That's the marketing, the PR, public relations and marketing and sales. And that's the piece that I see indies relying on these indie publishers to do. And I think you have to be very careful about whether you're putting your game. And I've never represented publishers, but I've got 2 developers right now who are publishing for third parties, and I've helped both of them. So, do they have the ability to do it? Yeah, I hope so. And certainly, I like to think that guys that I represent have at least me as a backup, and maybe that'll help. But I question whether this is guys who had a one-trick pony and are trying to make a living. I mean, why would you publish? If you were a developer, why would you want to publish somebody else?
Because it's extra revenue that's allegedly less work that you have to put into it.
For the money. Well, they think it's no work.
Well, that's the problem.
That's my concern, right? If they have the same level of hubris that a lot of indies have when they start making games, of, well, I can do this because I've done it. Oh, I know how. I've been buying games my whole life. Obviously, I know how to sell games. I mean, that's how stupid that is. I think it's, and keep in mind, my whole mindset is, oh fuck, I did criminal defense. I represented criminals in court for years. It's just like, I represent the little guy against the big guy. I always have my whole life, and I worry that little guys are trying to turn into big guys. And you're right. There's only one reason to do that. People make games for a lot of reasons, and money is not the main one. It's about passion. It's about vision. It's about a deep desire to create something beautiful or ugly or frightening or whatever. But it's not about. I don't know a lot of people aside from maybe Zynga who just made games to make money. They think they're money machines, right? I think they're way more than that. I think it's an art form and a lot of things like that. So when I see developers making a decision solely based on economic desires, I question their motivation, and I think their competence should be called into question.
When the developers that got into the industry because of their passion start making decisions purely based on revenue and money, that's when you start seeing all the questionable shit in games that it makes everybody jump up and down and yell, we hate free to play. Free to play isn't bad if it's done properly. And if it's done, like Fortnite, there's proved infinitely that, you don't have to, and Overwatch is the same way. You can have a free to play. Well, Overwatch isn't free to play, but regardless, just pretend it is for sake of the argument. When you just get rid of the facts for a second, and then we're going to talk about the rest of it. The fact that you can have in-app purchases in a game that don't give you don't give you an advantage over anyone else, and B, you aren't forced to do it. I read the review on the latest 2K basketball game, and it basically turned into a 2-page rant about you can't play the My Career part of this game that you just spent $60 on, by the way, without shelling out just VC after VC into the game. And that's the stuff that people hate, but when you sit back like Epic did and said, look, you can unlock all this crap if you spend a lot of time doing it, or you give us $10 a month and you can unlock more stuff that looks cooler, but you don't have an advantage over anybody. And they've made, they were pushing 80 million monthly average users last month. So it can be done, but I agree with it. You start seeing developers go, oh, we need to have this in there because we're going to make money. And then design choices suck ass.
Well, isn't that how Fortnite turned into a battle royale?
Yeah.
Hey, battle royale's hot. We can overlay that. Which is kind of weird.
Battle royale wasn't that hot. It was like this one game is doing hot,
Well, yeah, PUBG was killing it, and they said, "Hey, we can do that with this."
We can do this, and so it obviously wasn't that simple.
I play PUBG all the time, and I played Fortnite before it went battle royale, and thought it was kind of which is okay because it's not necessarily my cup of tea. But at the same time, I am a bit surprised. I'm very surprised, probably as surprised as I was about Legos. I mean Minecraft, where these games, and I think it has to do with. I live on an island outside of Seattle, and I was on the ferry going over there and I'm watching this, and you park your car, it's a 15-minute ride. You go upstairs to either use the head or go get a cup of coffee or whatever. And I'm sitting there with my wife and some other people, and waiting for the ferry to cross. And this nice lady's walking by with her little kids, about a 6-year-old, and she's walking, and she looks down at her little boy and says, "Oh, Timmy, do your Fortnite dance." It's a 6-year-old kid. Now, I don't know what a Fortnite dance is, but as soon as I hear
I have that 6-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so clearly what they found, and part of it probably has to do with the visual style of the game, which has a cartoony fun thing, and the bright colors. It's got bright colors. But I'm still at a bit of a, and I know how much fun, Battle Royale is just a friggin' blast. But I'm kind of at a loss as to the level of success, not the success, but the level of the success, where it just sort of turned into Blizzard overnight.
It's one of the, they talk about storms coming in, this is the storm of the century. This is Fortnite is one of those games that we see about once a decade. Yeah. Think about, so we can really show our age here. Think about what happened when Deer Hunter got released in Walmart.
Oh God, yes.
It's the same thing, 15 years later.
Well, no, Deer Hunter was just shit, though. I mean, Deer Hunter was,
okay, yes.
The amazing thing for me was, I don't know if you kids remember Deer Hunter, the first Deer Hunter. First Deer Hunter was the ugliest POS game ever made. It was made for $100,000 back then, which is probably maybe the equivalent of 400. But what had happened is Walmart was this huge. I think that Walmart hadn't been cracked yet. I don't think there were games.
No, there weren't. Well, there were games in it, but there weren't any games that were targeted towards the Walmart consumer.
So apparently, some guy from the distributor, one of the publishers, was there, and he was wandering around. He's talking to the guys at the gun counter and saying, "Well, what kind of game do you think your customers would like?" "Oh, we want one on hunting deer."
But
and so they did.
Do you know who that person was?
Was that you? Was that you?
No, it was Jim Perkins.
You're kidding.
No.
Wow, he must have made bank on that.
Because Stu, the late Stu Kasoy, another, he was involved. He worked with Jim on that. I'm pretty sure that was Jim.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, really. Wow. That takes us back, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Wait, so everyone out there, we are going. Tom's like, we should sit here for like an hour and talk about all the horror stories. I was like, wait, hold that. In 2 weeks, on Halloween Day, and I think the 26th, whatever the show before Halloween is, that's what we're going to do. I haven't really broke this to Indy yet, I don't think. But Indy, I need some placards that say, some nice Halloween horror, because we're going to do 2 shows where we sit around and tell, horror stories like the one that Tom and I are alluding to right now.
Well, I don't know if this is a horror story. The
multiplayer part.
No, I just want to say the very first game, because I got to get to this point, because it rings true. Everybody in the game industry on the production side, the people who make games, thought this was the worst game ever made. People on the business side, it was terrible. Come on, it was ugly. It had bad graphics. It was just, I would use the word shit, but I don't want to offend my dog's ass. But the people on the marketing side, I'd go to conferences and see them talking about how this was the best game ever made, right? Because it had the highest ROI for the smallest investment. They invested $100,000. They sold millions.
They put $100,000 into that game.
And get this. Walmart at the time when the first Deer Hunter came out started selling more computers than they ever had before, and people were actually buying desktop computers to play Deer Hunter. That's the impact it had. And that expanded our market tremendously because it brought all these people in. So I don't know. It sort of reminded me of when I went to Casual Connect a few years later, and the big deal was, hey, we're making casual games, but we don't have to spend $450,000 on these games because shitty games make just as much money. And I'm thinking, is this what we've come to? Is it all right?
And it was like that for years.
Yeah.
I was trying to find the actual. It's like somewhere there has to be sales data on what that first one did. But yeah, I mean, it was. Wait, It was developed for 125,000 copies and sold over 1 million units. And I'm sure.
Yeah, but at the time, that means it probably outsold Quake.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 1 million units doesn't sound like that much now, but it is.
At that, it was it. Yeah.
This was in 1997. I mean, we used to, and I'll confess, I was that typical, Walmart customer. I hunt. And so me and my buddies were like, I had a deer hunting game. Do you know how we stalked the deer in that game? If you would take the mouse and put it almost to the side of the screen, so it scrolled, because that's all it was. You scrolled around in a circle. If it would scroll, but it wouldn't scroll fast. And if you watch the screen, it would stutter every now and then. That stutter meant a deer, aka another animation, was coming into the screen. That's how you knew a deer was coming out. Bad? Yes, it was nice. We would take the mouse and scoot it over, not to the full scroll side of the screen, but so it would just barely scroll. And when it stuttered a couple of times, you knew a deer was coming out.
You actually played that game.
I played it a lot, actually. Yes, we because I was in my final years of college at that point, and we would. Now, granted, it wasn't like we were playing Mario Kart and we're all sitting around and we're all actively engaged. It was literally like, if this is the computer and we're playing on it, we've got it open, but we're over here watching the basketball game or something and just looking over every now and then to see when the screen stuttered. I mean, it was that bad.
See, well, you're doing that, and I'm playing Quake in tournaments for 5 or 6 hours a day.
Well, yeah.
And sucking. Let's not forget that.
That's the other. So yeah, we were on indie publishers. This is
and I'm not making any conclusions, and I'm sure that some of these publishers are going to do really well.
Some of them will. I mean, without a doubt.
But it's sort of like it's just like you remember Indie Pub? I think they're out of business now. It used to be what were they before that? Zoo Games. You ever work with those guys?
Yeah.
You know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So they were notorious for signing people, not doing anything, taking all the money, and not even paying them their percentage. I mean, they're really bad.
And there are still companies like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. I mean,
they don't go away. The thing is, there's so many developers out there that want to get their game to market that they tend to ignore these stories that they hear and all these warning signs, because it's like, a publisher wants my game. It's like that publisher has been busted being a crook like 5 times, but they don't.
They're on their 4th company, right? Because they keep changing their name.
Exactly. All right. So wait.
I gotta get now. Let's talk about. Okay, so these people are bad, but let's talk about how bad the indies who sign with them can be, right? Because what they do is, first of all, they don't go out and survey the economic environment, the ecosystem, to see what's what and who's who. They don't ask people. What happens is they go down in their little gopher, and it's dark in there, but there's a bright computer screen, and they tap until they have a game, and then they go out and they start to show it around, and somebody who's hands them a business card and it says, "I'm a publisher" on it, right? It doesn't matter who the publisher is, because that doesn't really matter. It's a publisher, and the publisher looks and says, "Wow, I really like your game," right? At that point, the deal's done, right? Because this guy is now, all of a sudden, this whole part of it that he wasn't really sure that he had the ability to do has now been done for, right? He has the ability to get somebody else to worry about all the distribution stuff, and so they sign a deal. And I've seen these deals signed at alpha stage.
Uh-huh.
And then what the publisher does at that point is, since there's no, and it's very difficult. I know how often have you gotten a hard number figures in a publishing deal?
You cut out a hard number on what?
On PR.
Oh, never.
And marketing and public relations. I have, but it was a very unique. First of all, the game has to be done, right? And if it's done, you got to question whether you need a publisher. And then you get them to actually, they'll say they'll use their commercially best efforts to blah, blah, which is meaningless. So the publisher actually has no obligation
to market the game or to make it succeed. So what these bottom feeders will do is they'll just go out and they'll go to IndieCon and this other ones and all these different conferences, and they'll sign as many indies as they can. And then they just don't. Then they just sit on them and wait until one of them pops. And then they'll use that. Then they use the one that succeeds to pitch themselves to the next set of fools. And I actually saw I got one for the War Stories. It's a horror show. I'm not going to go into it now. Remind you. But no, somebody said this. I had a client. This guy comes to me and he signed one of these deals, and 2 years later, the game's about to go into beta, and he needs money to finish it, and the publisher's nowhere to be found. He finds another publisher who's going to give him $100,000 to polish the game and bring it to market. Goes to the old publisher and say, "You never did anything. I'm going to go with this new publisher." The guy says, "Not so fast. We own the rights to distribute your game. If you want them back, you're going to have to pay us."
Yeah.
For doing nothing, for tricking me into signing a bad deal. Of course, well, he could fight it and probably win, but that would cost him.
That would cost more than
paying the bribe.
Yeah.
You know, so it is a little dangerous. And keep in mind, I think this is important too. Is that to have a successful publisher who's really good at exploiting, right? They have to be really good at exploiting your game in the marketplace in order to be of any value to you. The problem with people who are real good at exploiting is that they think that they look at the entire world as something to be exploited to their benefit. So you have to make sure that they understand that they're to exploit your game and not you, right? So you don't want to, you want a publisher who is really good at exploiting, and then you want to make sure that you create a relationship where they look at you as a peer, not prey, and that they understand that they are there to exploit your game in the marketplace, but not to exploit your studio. And it's a hard message to deliver to somebody.
That's a very fine line to try to navigate.
Yep. And even when
I've got two questions that I want you to go through. Now that we have sitting here for an hour and 15 minutes and basically, did partake in a lot of knowledge, but
no, we didn't really do anything.
It's been good conversation though. I mean, I've just been here listening. So
yeah, why are you not talking?
Because I'm just listening. This is stuff I don't know anything about. So I mean, I could just be on the camera.
Yeah, me either. Me either. What's the difference?
I mean, I could just be here and look pretty, and that's really.
All right, so Tom,
there you are.
What is the biggest mistake that you see indie devs do day in and day out, from a legal standpoint, not from?
Oh. I guess the first one that comes to mind, which is always, I mean, if you go back and look, I've written a whole bunch of them. They're all on my website somewhere. And I don't write them anymore because I don't bother. No, seriously though, from the very beginning, the first article I wrote tells the story of a bunch of guys who get together and they want to make a game, so they get together and they make a game and they get some music off the internet and they put it in the game, and then they go out and they think that the first contract they're going to need to look at, or the first written agreement they're going to have, is going to be with somebody who's going to sell their game for it, whether it be a distribution port. You get everything from a click through to distribution port to a publishing deal with a publisher. And they don't look at the one thing, I guess, the first thing is you can't sell what you don't own. And you don't own your game unless you have an agreement from everybody who contributed any sort of asset to the game in writing, conveying their ownership of that asset to either you or your company, right? So not having that stuff buttoned up can be really problematic, especially when, I used to see this a lot when I was working with young kids and, young kids, people who are still in college, and they get together and then, these dorm games, and some of them were kind of cool, but and then they all go their separate ways, and then somebody wants to take the game and do something with it. Well, they can't really. Because the guy, 3 guys worked on the code, and you don't know where one of them is. And I mean, it doesn't mean anything until something goes wrong, and then it's really a problem. So I guess not doing the little groundwork that it takes to make sure that that you own the assets that are in the game is probably I should give you
and that's the perfect that leads directly into the next question of what should a studio do to make sure that as they are forming that they are set up in a legal and a protected manner.
Well, I mean, first of all, you need either an individual, a legal entity that's going to own everything. So normally that would be either a corporation or a limited liability company. Very easy to put together. You know, to mycorporation.com or corporations.com, or you go directly to the Secretary of State to put companies together. Probably cheaper to use an accountant than lawyers charge too much for this shit because it's really basic and it's something that you should understand better yourself anyway. So, you know, go to those places. I think LegalZoom does it. There's 100 places where you can get it done. It's not a big and then you dump your assets into that company, and then that company does business. The other, you know, and you have to be a little careful. The other thing I see people doing, this is going to sound a little crappy on my part, is they fail to distinguish the difference between a good partner and a good employee. And they like say there's 4 guys working, and so they divide the ownership of the company up 4 ways. But 2 of the guys really aren't. They're not the kind. A partner is somebody who you don't have to tell what to do. You know, they're going to step up. They're going to be self-motivated. They're going to be driven to deliver whatever the company needs to succeed. An employee is somebody who does what you ask them. Does it well, does it competently, and does it without bitching, right? That's really an employee. So you got a really great artist. He may not be a good person to be an owner of the company. He may be a great person to have a percentage of the company, but not to be one of the controlling owners. The most successful studios I've seen usually have at least 2, or one of them was Fifth Cell has three primary guys who run the company, and they work really well together. Even Valve has 2 or 3 people at the top that run the company. They don't say so, but they do. And the bigger companies make it more complex, but I don't know. Jay, do you have a lot of client companies where there's just one guy who runs the company?
Yeah. I mean, I'm one of those too.
No, I'm not talking about. I'm sorry. Let me be clear. Do you have any game development studios that are succeeding that have how many that are succeeding have multiple people, and how many is just a person?
The number that have a single person in charge is much smaller than the number with multiple people in charge.
Yeah. And I mean, I've dreamt my whole life of having a law partner to rely on and lean against, and never found one. And I think my practice, some of the limitations in my practice, and everybody has limitations, are probably a result of that. The problem is a lot of times, as we said much earlier, you don't know what you don't know. You know what you know. You know what you think you know what you know and don't know, but you don't know what you don't. And that means that a single person is going to have blind spots. The other thing is, if you're a AAA person, you're leaving, like somebody who just goes energizer buddy guys, and they're leaving shit laying all over the place. And I think I had a buddy of mine in Miami when I lived there, used to play backgammon with him. He worked for a real estate developer that did all these 9-figure giant deals, right? And this guy was so the head of the company, Ira, was just a madman, man. He was like he was manic with no depressive, just bam, 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 deal. Like that constantly, like a vibrating tone, like a vibrating pitchfork or something. And then my buddy Christian was just this laid back guy who was kind of lazy, but really smart. And he would very calmly walk along behind Ira, picking up all the pieces and putting them together and making sure that everything fit and everybody was smoothed out, because Ira would piss people off all the time, right? And then Christian, who was just a sweetheart, would come and give him a big hug and say, "It's all right now. Let's put all this money in a pile. Thank you. It's all ours now." But it was almost a perfect relationship, because if there had been 2 AAA guys, they would tear each other apart. If there were 2 lazy, clever guys, they would never get anything done. But the combination of the two were so complementary that they got the job done. The guys at Fifth Cell, you've got a creative director, a business director, and an operations guy. And that's kind of, and that makes it work really well. And it's really a challenge for a smaller teams where there's just one or two people. And
I mean, even with my company, it took a lot for me to sit down and admit to myself that I can't do everything. I can't go out and find the clients and at the same time do the stuff I need to do for the clients. And, that realization, it was like years into, the Powell Group before I finally was like, okay, I need help. And then, I immediately went and got, Jennifer, who's on my team, and to this day, and she is my, absolute right hand and the one that, catches it and goes, Jay, don't forget to do this. Oh yeah, that's right. So it's always you have to find those people who are your symbiote, basically. And it's not always going to be your best friend. It's rarely going to be your best friend. It's something that it takes years of trying to working with somebody before you kind of figure it out. But the companies that are absolutely wholly run by one person, very rare. And in our industry, a lot of times it's because that one person that wants to run the company and do everything is also the lead artist or the lead programmer. And so now you're taking a job for 2 or 3 people, and you're not only moving it to one person, but you're moving it to one person who doesn't even have 100% of their time to invest in it. It's and that's where, from the business side, I see a lot of studios fail.
Yeah. Well, it's the Peter principle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Each person rises to their level of incompetence.
Yep.
And I think I see it all the time. You said a frightening thing a second ago. It's the lead artist who runs the company. I had some experiences with clients where the lead artist happened to have some friends and family money. So he ended up being in charge of the studio. And the problem was, this guy may be the greatest artist I've ever worked with. He's amazing. But he would come out of business meeting. He lived in his imagination. And the external world was just a place where he expressed this genius world that he lived in, right? But that was all in his head. And so he'd come out of a business meeting. There were some people that you've already mentioned were involved in the deal. And he came out with a completely different understanding of what had occurred, because it's what he thought, what he wanted to have happen. So he thought this is what happened. And 6 months later, we're in deep shit. And they didn't, unfortunately.
You do remember that I was in those meetings he was in too, right?
Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's just like, and he's just like, no, that's not the way this works. That was they over delivered. They should have upsold that game, and it would have been fine.
Okay. That's one of the horror stories I was going to tell.
I'll get permission from those guys to tell it, because they won't care.
We can tell it. We just don't want to tell who the names are.
Oh, why not?
Because we're not going to do that. I like the guy.
I like them all. Well, I don't know. I'm not too sure about Jim. Wait a second. Oh well. Yeah, there was something else I thought of a second ago, but it's gone now.
We're running out of time here. So.
Oh, jeez. All right.
And in a new indie game business record, we got through 3 of the questions that we had laid out for the show. As
really?
Our normal 7. Yes.
Oh, cool.
But this is why, like we were talking before we went live. It's like you go back and you look at the very first episodes of the show, and it's me and Indy talking, or it's me giving like a presentation. And yes, people learn from that, but not as much as people learn from these real conversations, that we have with other folks in the industry about, this went wrong and this is why it went wrong. And this is what you need to do to make it not go wrong. And, that sort of stuff. So yeah, we've never actually made it through our entire list of questions, but that's why,
this is what lawyers are very good at. And I'm not even very good at it. But lawyers get paid by the hour. So lawyers learn to be able to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And then every once in a while say something that's so compelling
that you think that there's reason to keep listening. Meanwhile, they're just, watching the clock. I've seen lawyers who are just brilliant. This one guy talked, he worked for the Shah or one of the royal family, and God, crazy stories. But he could actually spend 25 minutes and it's just saying hello on the phone. He was brilliant in that. I don't think that's a real valuable skill, but I guess maybe it is. It's a professional
it is for its bottom line.
Yeah, if that's what it's about. I don't know. My whole value system's so screwed up at this point.
Well, Tom, we appreciate it greatly, you being on here, and we're going to do this again.
Yeah, well, if you make it as easy as this one, except for the getting up this early, but I can.
You can handle it.
Do I get to do a shameless commercial plug?
Yes, of course you get to do a shameless commercial plug.
God damn, okay, because I know there's probably 6 people who are going to see this.
There are 16 right now.
Wow, okay. GameAttorney.com, of course, that's my website. Go there. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. There's my blogs there. There's a bunch of articles. Also, the GameDevKit.com. We were talking about mistakes that indies make. I was speaking at Indie Gamescom, the old garage games went back probably 15 years ago. And I realized that this not securing the assets of the company was a pretty bad thing. And I developed over several clients what I feel is a real competent contributor agreement that applies to both employees and contractors and subcontractors. So I was going to distribute that in a generic. I talked to, Jay Moore, used to be at Garage Games. He said, Tom, you got to wrap it in a package. So I wrapped it in a package, but mostly it's a really very contributor agreement, as well as an analysis of the different types of intellectual property and other stuff.
Tom, there's one problem with your game dev kit.
What is it?
And we actually plugged it earlier in the show. And one of our users, Tyler and you, notified us that your SSL certification needs to be updated. So when we click on the game dev kit, it gives us a insecure error, at least in Chrome.
Oh, it's because it's not a, oh, geez. Well, that's going to be a while. I don't know how to do that shit. I'll have to.
Worked for me. In Firefox.
It's not working for me.
All right. Well, I will have my son try to fix that. I'm sure he can. He's a developer. He knows all this shit. I don't know anything. But the whole point is just to, wait. The other thing is, it comes with a 20% discount on 10 hours of my time, which is worth $1,000. So if you're in a spot, and also if you want to talk, just reach out to me on Skype. I generally will. I keep my Skype on. I have a Discord channel that I'm trying to learn how to use, but nobody ever comes here to my channel anyway. But if you have a question, I'm always ready to answer questions. I like to help people, and if I'm busy, I blow people off. But if I'm not, or if it's really stupid, I may make fun of them. If they can't handle somebody making fun of them,
So the plus side to you being on the show is that the folks that are in our Discord can now find you as well, because you are you're on our server and you are tagged as a guest of the show, so your name is sitting like way high up on the chart on the right.
And what I hear that Pokemon's.
What's that?
Is Pokemon going to be on your show?
Pokemon. I have no idea.
She's one of these. What is she? 15 years old and has 20 million followers or something. I don't know.
Oh yeah. And there was a thing on Instagram I saw yesterday that one of the kids who has made millions and has millions of followers on YouTube reviewing toys and games now has his own line of toys and games.
This girl's doing the same thing. Pokemon.
No,
there's actually
no one with any actual following agrees to be on the show.
I believe that that she has. They're doing a documentary about her, a documentary film about a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah,
she's awfully cute. And you got to say she's awfully. And she lives in a house with Indy. You know all about her, don't you?
I don't know all about her. I mean, I've heard the name.
Yeah, see, I haven't. I was shocked.
I honestly really don't watch Twitch streams too much.
Yeah, me either. I was shocked at E3. One more thing. I was shocked at E3 a couple of years ago. The biggest crowd, E3, the biggest game marketing event in North America. I guess Gamescom's probably bigger now. And the biggest crowd in the whole room was a crowd around a bunch of people who play games. Not people who make this. There's thousands of people who make and sell games in this room, and there's 4 people who play games online. Everybody wants to see them. And I went over. I was at PAX East, and I went to the Marriott. Is it the Marriott next door? And I went to Jason.
I've never been to PAX.
Oh, what?
I know.
Anyway,
I want to go, but I don't want to work.
And there's people. These people come in. These young people come in with entourages of like 12 people around them, just like Hollywood stars. So now apparently you can make more money playing games than you can making them, because people would rather watch them do. Sad commentary. Sad commentary.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, the ratio of people that try to make money playing games and the ones that actually do is probably even worse than the industry we're in, with the people trying to make video games.
Really?
No.
You know what? I think the chances of becoming a leading actor in a AAA big movie are greater than becoming a live streamer that is that famous. So.
I bet it's about the same. I think it's hard to succeed no matter what you're doing.
There's millions and millions of people trying to be live streamers, and I really don't think there's just like millions and millions of people trying to be actors. So
yeah, there are. It's called
sure there are.
The entire city.
Know. There's like 1 million Twitch affiliates. I mean, there's literally like more than 2 million people streaming on Twitch. So
yeah,
really.
And Twitch isn't even the only platform.
Right.
You got Twitch and then Mixer and then the people that are still on YouTube, and now you've got Caffeine, and there's another one.
Oh, yeah. There's multiple. Plexstorm. That's the one that you watch all the time, right, Jay?
All right. Well, let's talk esports instead. Anyway,
that's a whole other kettle.
Yeah.
All right.
It's changed so much, hasn't it, Jay?
It's amazing that we can do what we do now, and people pay us to do it.
I just. One of the coolest things about the industry from day one was the fact that it just keeps changing so much. It's such an organic live thing. And you remember when Facebook games were going to be the only thing in the industry? Mobile games were it, or PC is dead. All this stuff that we've seen over the years, it's just great. We should do a nostalgia thing where we talk about
it. Never changes. I mean, it's a cycle. Everybody, I get this all the time, and I know I'm like we're over, and I need to shut up, but I can't. I get people that come to me all the time. They go, "Oh, the industry has changed so much since blood date," that they give me, and I'm like, "No, it hasn't. It's the same shit we see. It's different names attached to it." But how many times have we, turned around in the last 2 decades and somebody's gone, "Oh, PC gaming is dead." It's not, or mobile games are dead, or whatever.
Mobile games are going to take over. I think what they fail to see is that it's additive. It's not. It's not. We do not have a limited ecosystem. So when something takes over part of it, it diminishes the rest of it. It actually just keeps getting bigger and better and broader. Parts of it may be less attractive to people like you and I don't like click and drool games, but it's an interactive experience and it qualifies.
I don't understand idle games at all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but it's still
they make a shit ton of money.
What it's done is what happens is it broadens the industry, and as some of these people who start playing click and drools or idle games, the next thing you know, they're checking out maybe Journey or Flower or one of the more less scary games to get into, and then you've got these 50-year-old women who are playing Call of Duty, and they're out there. Don't kid yourself.
No, I have one of my seared into my memory Overwatch matches was we're playing, and this Reinhardt just keeps charging in and dying and charging in and dying. And I hear this voice, obviously an older woman, and she goes, "Bless his heart." And I loved it. It's like, one,
Bless his heart.
You need to be from the South in the U.S. to understand the hidden meaning of that phrase.
Yeah.
But
it also identifies a certain age group.
Yes, I fell out. I was like, I keep my mic, and I was like, I've been playing this since day one, and that's the first bless his heart I've ever heard in Overwatch.
I've heard a lot
but
of
she was dead right, you know, because he was just like, it's like, buddy,
Yeah.
you know, that's not how you do this, you know. So
I gotta wonder how many PUBG guys would be if they know they just got owned by a 70-year-old.
oh, I need an emote in Fortnite when my son takes out 2 people, and I'm like, you just got offed by a 7-year-old. All right, so I hope your streaming audience enjoyed that. All right. We gotta go. Tom,
Jay, it's been great anytime, man.
Yes,
we're
gonna do this again.
I don't usually do anything at this time of day because I'm sleeping.
Yes,
So I can carve out time for you. Indy, it's been a pleasure meeting you. Maybe I'll get to see you in what they call RL sometime.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to TwitchCon. I don't know if you're going to TwitchCon, but
No, I don't. Why would I do that?
I have no idea.
Is it in Seattle?
No, it's
No, if it was in Seattle, I'd probably go.
I was going to
Yeah,
say,
okay.
if it's in Seattle, you can at least, you know, con Tom into
No,
buying you a beer.
yeah.
I'm just as close to San Francisco as I am to Seattle.
That's true.
Oh, you're in Portland?
I'm in Southern Oregon,
Whereabouts?
right by Medford.
Oh, yeah. I used to spend a lot of time down in Eugene when my son lived there.
Where all the cannabis dispensaries are, but that's another story for another time.
It's like,
Hey, I live on an island with 10,000 people. 10,000 people. We got two, not dispensaries, stores.
Yeah, we have
outlets.
where I live. The population is 6,000, and we have five stores.
Nice. Yeah, but you must be on a highway. You have to take a ferry to get to my island.
Yeah, really, wherever I live,
We have no drive-bys.
You can walk 5 minutes and go whatever direction, and it
More dope.
smells like pot all over the place right now.
Well, thank God.
but
That's all I
thank
gotta
you
say.
all for being here. Special thanks to Tom for getting up early.
That's
Thanks for
Don't
the invite,
forget
guys.
to, you know, drop us a follow, because, you know, we do this twice a week. Mondays we do a marathon of, you know, 5 or 6 shows, so you can just basically queue it up when you start working and listening to us ramble, you know, all day long. And yeah, we'll be back Monday. We'll have a marathon next Wednesday. I'm not sure who we have. We will have someone. And then, yeah, Coast Toward Halloween, we're going to have our Halloween horror
Are
stories.
you going to dress up for that, Jay? Are you going to cosplay?
I am dressed up. I'm wearing pants. I mean, that should
Actually
count
have
for
pants?
something. Yes, well,
Geez,
sure.
I'm not. Was I supposed to wear pants?
that's like,
I'm not, so don't worry.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's
We
finally
got
going to
this.
take the mask off. Brutal.
Does that beard come off?
That beard does not come off.
No,
All right.
It
All
does
right.
dance, though. It's like Chewbacca dancing.
it's like,
See that? Okay.
Oh, that's good.
thank you, everyone.
It really does.
Oh, look at that. We got a follow. Thank you for the follow. And thank you guys for hanging out with us. Jay's hat is close enough to Ash Ketchum's hat. He's cosplaying. That's funny.
Who?
Ash, from Pokemon.
Oh, I could probably actually find one of those hats if I needed to. Anyway, yes. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Ciao, baby.
We'll see you next week.
All right. Bye,
Catch you later.
everybody. Peace out.